Welcome to the Help Now group, and we're with some very lovely friends of mine, Kate Seselja from the Hope Now project. And we just came together today. We just want to talk a little bit about things that are happening in the community, and also just talk about how Awake, Kate's project, feeds in and really influence a lot of the work we do at the Help Now with peer support work, with mental health peer support work. And so we're just going to dig into what that means, how Kate got into that, and her reflections on how that can benefit peer support workers that might be out there looking to get into the industry, and also normalize those pathways to getting into helping your community members. We're at lovely CIT today with Kate, and having to think about how we can really build this project to make sure that mental health peer support workers get the tools they need at the coalface, but also give them those supports along the way. If they're studying at CIT or any other institution, at least they've got something tangible that they can start with, and then just have some stepping stones. And Kate and I's discussion has really been about really narrowing down those pathways for people. And it's always the knowledge, right? Do I have enough knowledge? Do I have enough peers in my network to connect the dots and get where I want to be to serve people, which I can definitely acknowledge from when I first got into community service stuff. It's like, where do I start now? So for the viewers out there that don't know Kate and the Awake and the Hope Project, give us a little bit of your space and how you got into building this program.
Well, it was definitely built from my lived experience. At first, I didn't just quit gambling one day and go out on tour the next day. That's not how it worked. I restored me first, and that was a journey that just didn't happen overnight. It was about reconnecting back to every aspect of my life and not looking at my life as a failure or anything like that, because I'd struggled with addiction for over 12 years, gambling addiction, and I'd seen that whole area of my life as this failure, and I hadn't considered it as a powerful way to accumulate knowledge for change. And that's something that I really help people reframe now, their experiences, whether it be with mental health services or addictions or other struggles, that their stories are important. Their lived experience is powerful to create change, both within individuals and on a policy level. If we don't help reframe this whole experiencing life and being human, then people stay trapped in shame and allow power where it just doesn't need to be anymore.
And how, and you would, like myself, people with lived experience and living in those situations, even that call to make that appointment for the GP, to have a chat, and what am I physically feeling? What am I mentally feeling? How do I, where do I get the tools?
Yes.
So you build a tool.
So I felt there weren't tools. 8 years ago was when I, reclaimed me, and there was no language, constructive language. And that was where Awake was really born from, was how do I help people have constructive conversations when they can see a family member or themselves are in distress and feeling overwhelmed? How can I identify what is impacting my well-being, and how can I be constructive at repairing those gaps, and not just being oppressed under a label of I'm an addict, and falling into apathy. That is where that came from. The Hope Project, the overarching area, was really born from me first being a lived experience speaker for Gambling Impact. And as I would be just sharing my story, my lived experience, people would say, wow, that really made sense, what you've lived through, but I've actually never gambled. And I realized that end outcome of my pain is really irrelevant when you look at how there's so much we miss that's impacting our life when we just zero in and focus on the behavior or that particular struggle. So it's about what I realized was to bring it back and make it about how can we be more sustainable as human beings, and, you know, restore some fundamentals back into our society that's kind of been missed when we only focus on academic intelligence and miss out on emotional intelligence.
Yeah, look, emotional intelligence, and I think there's this big shift. You know, I was inspired by some training that I went to this year about this massive gap in really heavy-handed Australian structures where the psychiatrist is really heavy-handed, and people from overseas were commenting about how it's so heavy-handed, and then recognizing there's so many gaps. There were some peer support workers there, and I thought, oh, you know, and we had some conversations, and all the proper people were on some sides of the room, and the peer support workers were on some.
Yes.
And I tell you, who stole the show was, you know, a person managing her schizophrenia quite well, and just said, look, I've not felt safe. You know, I was overdiagnosed, medicated, didn't know who I was. And I thought, look, how powerful is it for us in Help Now and looking at knowing Kate before and knowing other projects that are out there to support people, you know, journeying with mental health. And I thought, well, there's got to be an opportunity to, you know, highlight that gap, because we go from person and then clinician or GP that may not have that mental health training, and then that rolls on. That's your trusted family GP, isn't it? You go, do I go and bear all my wares to my trusted family GP that might know all the family? You go, oh, you know, and then to a clinician who may or may not sync with us. And what I love about mental health peer support and peer support work, and I'm so happy that CIT's going to push on to continue their training now, because there's very limited training in the area as well. And a big part for us and just having this relationship with CIT and the Hope Project and the other players that are playing in the space is how do we really engineer that people have not a one-stop shop, because that's full of pitfalls. There's lots of organizations with one-stop shops, but I think giving them a suite to at least dabble into things without one going into debt.
Yes.
That sometimes happens when you get private services or you know, pursue education that might be safe and might not be safe. What I love about the Awake resilience tool is it gives people that sense of, you know, doing and self-reflecting on your own time. And I would argue, Kate, that you've done a lot of mental health peer support work.
Yes.
A lot of voluntary philanthropic stuff.
Oh yeah.
I asked Kate a while back. I said, how many people are you working with? She's running out of fingers. I said, oh, okay. And I think, you know, how best can we synergize that, and not only knowing that Kate has her skill set and lived experience to provide to people, but I think of all those other, you know, the AFP, veterans, people, you know, working with people, injured workers that are really struggling through things, and they've got one group of people that they are supposed to look for support, and that's a shaky ground for them. And you just say, well, maybe there's something else that can be done.
Yes. I think that people give away their power too easily, and I think that happens because that's the only pathway that's kind of been modeled. And so people think that there's all of these external people that are going to have answers for them.
Yeah.
But what we've never kind of been taught is how to search for them ourselves. And another person giving you their 2 cents worth isn't ever going to make sense for your own life unless you've done that internal reflection and been curious about, okay, what has impacted my life up until this point? How has that played into who I am and what I'm trying to exist with, rather than recognizing that you've not been actually given specific tools to utilize to constructively work your way out of adversity.
Yeah. And I think, for people that, I love the shift, and I think really inspiring for me is, one, how we value those people that have that lived experience. And I think it's slowly shifting as far as pathways for people to get into structured white coats. But you can see a stark difference for those that have been through a lot of things for themselves, and then they get into caring. So they might have worked in government services, or serving hot dogs. You recognize that when they shift and they slowly get that confidence and that power back to go, well, I'm actually going to get in and change the system. There's still a lot of people out there, clinicians, that their lane is, okay, I've not had the lived experience, but they want to help, which I think is very valid and comforting. And I think, how do we really support those clinicians that are out there that might have had, the nuclear family, and things were, we'll say, less turbulent. Because, and I think, building those pathways, I think there's some exciting news coming October, November, with some synergy between the Hope Project and Help Now. But I think the greater we build people up with tools like Awake, and chatting with the Hope Project, and the resilience showing that's coming on the 13th of September, don't miss it. You'll get to catch Kate next week at ATCOS. But I think the more frequently we can build people's strengths up so they want to get into stuff that really is meaningful to them. And I know for me, getting into social work itself, it was quite daunting. And I remember thinking, failed many courses, and saying, there's no one around me. There's no one that had even finished, year 12 in the family. And you go, do I have enough to keep going? And I think, tools like Awake, some other colleagues out there have some other really, really handy tools. And it's not this massive pay for service that they've got to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to go, can I operate in a structure? And I think for peer support workers, at least in my own reflection, is finding a way to give them those structures that they can really build that momentum to get into stuff like you've been doing for
100%.
some time.
I think that, for me, Awake isn't a quick fix or a magic pill. It's a starting point for opening up pathways of curiosity within an individual. And I think that is the single greatest gift that I can pass on to another human being, is to make them curious about what they don't know about their world and what they're trying to exist with. And as far as be that model for people that really want to utilize what they have learned in order to give back, and
give them the language to unpack it with other people that might be at an earlier stage, a year before in their, reflective space, and that type of thing. And, that's the biggest part. And Kate's been instrumental, and, me and her have reflected on many, many ideas on growing and building these community resources, and making sure that those in specialized positions don't have all the power. And look, we'd love you all to come out and see us. We've fantastic opportunity for you to come out to a free game at night, meet some stars. Kate won't get a jersey on this year, but we'll try and book her next year. She's very busy. But Mental Health Month's coming in October. You can find us on Eventbrite or mentalhealthmonth.act.org. Also, come along and support. We've got some great CIT students that are in a community development project that are even putting their hands in and helping us with that. So we can't thank you enough for that. And thanks very much. We'll post on the page a little bit later, Kate's information for those clinicians out there, those frontline peer support workers, or those that, say, look, let's give it a crack. I think, if you contact Kate and say, hey, I'm thinking to get into some peer support work. What's your Awake project about? What can I learn about myself? By all means, get into that, and we'll post some more links on the page.
Thank you.
What,